During my pregnancy announcement party, both my husband and sister-in-law ganged up on me and claimed they had found evidence of me cheating, only for both of them to show up at my parents' place a day later, claiming it was all a prank. But now they're both crying because I told them about my plan for the both of them, and they desperately want me to stop because what I'm about to do is not a prank, but exposing their dirty business. The past few days have really been a roller coaster, and I do not know what to make of it. I hope you guys can help me. For some background, I'm 29, married to my husband Jake, who's 34. We've been together for 8 years and have a 6-year-old son. Both of us work, but Jake has always been the one to handle our finances. I trusted him with that because he seemed to have a good grip on our financial situation, and I was more focused on my family and career. Everything seemed fine until recently, when his sister Megan moved in with us after what she described as a messy breakup with her partner, Tom. Megan was clearly upset, and I wanted to be supportive, so I never questioned her story. I was more concerned with making sure she felt welcome and comfortable in our home, and I put all my efforts into helping her recover from this horrible breakup. But what happened at my pregnancy announcement party just flipped a switch in my head. We had gathered close family and friends to share the news of our new baby. The house was filled with laughter, and everyone was excited. I had spent days planning this event, making sure every detail was perfect, from the decorations to the food. It was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives, a memory we could look back on with joy. As I stood in the living room, ready to make the announcement, Jake and Megan exchanged a look that I didn't quite understand at the time. I brushed it off, thinking they were just excited or nervous about the news. But just as I started to share our big news, the atmosphere shifted. Jake and Megan stepped forward, and the room fell silent as they abruptly interrupted me without any warning. Jake and Megan came up to me and started asking, "How could you do this?" For a second, I laughed because I thought it was some kind of joke. But after a while, reality struck me. They were accusing me of cheating. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. They claimed they had evidence, something undeniable that proved I had betrayed Jake and our family. My heart pounded in my chest as they laid out their accusations in front of everyone. It was like a bad dream, surreal and terrifying. Nothing made sense. They were just saying random things without explaining anything. I was simply lost. The guests were stunned, their expressions shifting from joy to confusion and disbelief. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, questioning. Jake and Megan sounded so convincing and so final that I think everybody assumed I was guilty. I stood there frozen, trying to process what was happening. I kept searching their faces, hoping to see some sign that this was a joke or a mistake. But there was nothing. They were serious, and the more they talked, the more isolated I felt. It wasn't just the shock of the accusations. It was the way they were delivered. So cold, so calculated. They had planned this, rehearsed it, and now they were executing it in front of my friends and family. How could they accuse me of something so terrible without a shred of evidence? What was the point of this? The more I questioned, the more they doubled down, as if my confusion and pain were proof of my guilt. The people I trusted most were turning on me in the most public, humiliating way. After Jake was done shouting, he stormed out of the room, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. I just stood there, my heart racing, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The guests, clearly uncomfortable and unsure of what to do, began to murmur among themselves. It must have been so awkward for them, caught in the middle of such a personal and public spectacle. Slowly, one by one, they started to leave, offering awkward glances and half-hearted goodbyes. I couldn't blame them. They didn't know what to believe, and I didn't have the strength to explain. I wanted to ask Megan what all of this was about, to demand some sort of explanation, but before I could even gather my thoughts, she rushed out of the house with her mom, not sparing me a single glance. I felt completely abandoned. The walls of the house that once felt like a home were now closing in on me. The place that had been filled with laughter and love just moments ago now felt cold and suffocating. I couldn't stay there for another second. With tears streaming down my face, I quickly packed a bag, grabbed my son, and left. I didn't know where to go, so I just drove aimlessly until I ended up at a small hotel on the edge of town. It was far enough away from everything that I could breathe again, but close enough that I could still feel the weight of what had happened pressing down on me. I checked in under a different name, hoping to keep a low profile. I didn't want to face anyone, my friends, my family, because in their eyes, I was a cheater, and I had no way to prove otherwise. My mind kept replaying the events of the evening, trying to make sense of Jake and Megan's actions, but nothing added up. How could they do this to me? What had I done to deserve such a cruel and humiliating attack? The next day, as I sat in the hotel room trying to keep myself together for the sake of my son, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, there they were, Jake and Megan. Somehow, they had found me. It must have been through my dad. He was the only one who knew where I was. I didn't even have time to process how they had tracked me down before they started talking through their apologies. They claimed that the whole thing was just a prank. They said they never meant for it to go so far, that they thought it would be funny, or that it was some twisted way to test my loyalty to Jake. The more they talked, the more absurd and infuriating their excuses became. A prank? They had humiliated me in front of everyone we knew, turned my world upside down, and they expected me to believe it was all a joke. But as they continued to beg for my forgiveness, something clicked. Their desperation wasn't just about the prank itself, it was about what I had started to uncover after the party. I decided not to push the issue further at that moment, but the whole situation didn't sit right with me. To make matters worse, Megan came to me later, out of the blue, telling me that I should never doubt Jake, that he was one in a million, and that I was lucky to have him. It was strange and unsolicited, almost as if she knew about the conversation I had with Jake and wanted to reinforce his narrative. All of this irked me and made me even more uneasy. So, I started keeping an eye on our bank statements and financial records more closely. As I combed through our accounts, I discovered something alarming. Jake had been transferring money to Megan. The transactions were disguised as harmless payments, but the amounts were too large and too frequent to ignore. He had been slowly siphoning off money from our savings and funneling it to Megan's account. The timeline of these transfers coincided with when Megan had supposedly moved in with us after her breakup, which now seemed more like a cover story than the truth. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Jake had always handled our finances, and I had trusted him implicitly. But now it was clear that he had been hiding things from me, big things. The missing money, the unpaid credit card bill, Megan's sudden appearance in our home. It all started to make sense, but not in the way I had hoped. I realized that Jake and Megan had concocted this whole story to distract me from their real activities. Megan wasn't just staying with us because she was heartbroken. She was hiding from the consequences of her actions. The money Jake was sending her wasn't a loan or a gift. It was part of a larger scheme to cover up her embezzlement from the business she had run with Tom. As this all clicked into place, I knew I couldn't stay silent. Jake and Megan had tried to manipulate me with their so-called prank at the pregnancy announcement party, hoping to throw me off the scent of their dirty business. But instead of deterring me, it had only made me more determined to uncover the truth. Now, at the hotel, Jake and Megan were in full panic mode, desperately trying to convince me that the accusations at the party were just a joke, a poorly thought-out prank that had gone too far. But I saw through their lies. I knew now what they were really afraid of, that I had figured out their scheme and wasn't going to let them get away with it. They pleaded with me to forgive them, to keep this all between us. But I was done playing their game. I told them everything I had discovered, how I knew about the money transfers, how I had pieced together Megan's lies, and how their so-called prank had only served to expose the depth of their betrayal. Their faces turned ashen as they realized I wasn't bluffing. I told them I was going to expose everything to our friends and families. I didn't tell them this, but if necessary, I would also let the authorities know. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the trust they had broken and the lengths they had gone to deceive everyone around them. They had used me, manipulated me, and now it was their turn to face the consequences. Jake and Megan broke down in tears, begging me to reconsider, to think about the impact this would have on our lives. But I didn't care anymore. Just like my husband hadn't cared before calling me a cheater in front of our families, this wasn't a prank, and I wasn't about to let them off the hook. They had made their choices, and now they would have to deal with the fallout. After a while, I grew tired of hearing their meaningless apologies and called hotel security to escort Jake and Megan out. As Jake was leaving, he turned to me and said something that hit me harder than I expected. "If you move forward with your plan, you'll destroy our son's and unborn child's lives." It was these comments that gave me the clarity I needed. Jake and Megan's betrayal wasn't just a personal attack on me, it was a pattern of deceit that could harm everyone around them. I couldn't let them continue without consequences. I made my decision. I would expose the truth, no matter how hard it was.